Hi, my name is Paddy Hirsch. I'm a senior editor at Marketplace. Today I want to talk about the public-private partnership. This is the scheme that the government has dreamed up to get toxic assets off the bank's balance sheets and get the banks lending again, and it's doing so by teaming up with the private sector, that is to say investors like hedge funds and private equity funds and others. So how does it work? Well, the name gives a lot of it away. It's the public is teaming up with the private sector in this partnership. So rather than talking about toxic assets like mortgage-backed securities or CDOs, let's use another type of asset, which is owned by our good friend Sam. Here he is again. And Sam, in his garage, has got an asset that he's trying to get rid of, and it is, in fact, his Hummer. Okay? Much to his wife's horror, Sam went out just before the gas crisis and bought this Hummer, and he paid $30,000 for it. Okay? 30K was the price. Now, because gas prices popped up to $4 immediately afterwards, he didn't drive this thing much. He just left it in the garage. And since then, a lot of things have happened that have precluded him from driving. Firstly, his wife wants him to use the Prius more. Secondly, there's all sorts of problems with GM and the parts manufacturers. People are worried about General Motors. They're worried about Hummer. They're also worried about the fact that, when you get to... Sam's worried if in 2 years' time he's been driving this thing and it breaks down, there's not going to be any parts available. Okay, so he wants to sell it. Okay, so he's looked around on Craigslist for some people and he's asked for some bids. And Craigslist, the people on Craigslist have come back and they've given him bids of around $5,000. Now Sam, he's mad, but he's not crazy. He doesn't want to be losing $25,000 on this thing. He realizes there's some depreciation when you drive it out of the store, but certainly not to that extent. So what does he do? Well, if he was able to tap the public-private partnership, what he would do is he would take the vehicle to an auction to try and get a real price for this. Because this is kind of the situation a lot of banks have find themselves in. They've got these assets, they obviously paid full price for them, and because of people's lack of confidence in the whole economy, bids are way, way low, all the way down in the fives and the tens, if there's any bids at all. So the banks say, well, I can't value these properly and I can't sell them because I'm not really getting a realistic bid. I think the bid should be a lot higher. So what happens is the banks are taking the assets to auction. So in this case, Sam takes his Hummer to auction, and there are a bunch of guys across there, and they're all bidding this and that. Some are bidding 5, some are bidding 10, some are bidding 15. But in the end, Ted, who's a banker actually, Ted bids 20. So here's Ted's bid. Ted's bid is $20,000. Now, if Ted was buying this under the public-private partnership, he wouldn't have to pay the whole $20,000. Okay, so say Ted's just like an investor, like a hedge fund who's buying these assets. He doesn't have to pay the full amount. What he does is he goes to the government and he says, okay, how much am I putting up and how much are you putting up underneath this partnership? Well, the government says, okay, you put up a fraction of this. Say you put up 4K. So Ted puts up $4,000. All right, and the government says, we'll match it. So the government also puts up $4,000. That's our money, by the way. Okay, well, what about the rest, says Ted. You need another 12 to make this deal. Well, the government says, what we'll do is we'll go and we'll get you a loan, and it'll be guaranteed by the FDIC. Okay, so here we have this FDIC loan of $12,000. Okay, and there we are. We've bought our vehicle, $20,000. We've made our investment, and we walk away. So taxpayers are on the hook in this case for $4,000, a comparatively small amount. Well, what about this FDIC loan, you say? Well, the FDIC is funded, it's an insurance organization funded by its members, not by the taxpayer. Although, if everybody called in all the loans that the FDIC makes, or if the FDIC was forced to pay out all of the money that it needs to, then the taxpayer probably would be on the hook at some point. But initially it's not. So initially you couldn't argue that that the taxpayer is on the hook here, except for this initial $4,000. Okay, so why is Ted doing this? Well, Ted's doing this because he's hoping to make a profit off this Hummer. Because if a Hummer gets spun off, or it's kept by GM, and GM recovers, and the parts makers recover, and gas prices go down, and everything is all right in the world in a year's time, Ted can turn around and he can say, okay, let's try and sell this back on the market again. So he goes out in 1 year's time. The Hummer price, second hand, turns out to be, let's say, $25,000. Okay? So the difference is $5,000 that Ted has made, the difference that Ted has made on this deal. So that $5,000 gets split between, that's the profit, that gets split between the government and Ted. That's divided down the middle. So in this case, both Ted and the government actually make money on the deal, which is great news. So in the case of these investments that we're talking about, these toxic assets, the investor invests a small amount of money, backstopped with a loan from the FDIC, or supported with a loan from the FDIC, in partnership with the government. And if the quality of those assets improves over time, or he can sell them for more money in a year's time, or however long it takes, or even if they actually mature, because most of them are loans or bonds, then the government and the investor split the profits between them. Of course, that's if all goes well. The other thing that can happen is that the value can go down. So say in the example of a Hummer, perhaps gas prices stay high, perhaps Hummer does dissolve, perhaps there are no parts, and you can only sell this thing for $5,000. Okay? So in actual fact, you've lost $15,000 on this deal. Well, in this case, Ted is wiped out. He's lost all of his money. The government's wiped out. So the taxpayer's lost all of his money. And even the FDIC is taking a hit here as well to some extent. And in that situation, the public-private partnership is going to leave all of these people, including the taxpayer, the burden on the FDIC is very, very high, could leave all of us very badly needing a drink.